I just finished setting my language learning goals for Spanish for 2023, and I'm extremely excited for everything that I'm going to be able to study and achieve next year. So in this video, I'm sharing with you what these goals are and how I am learning Spanish in 2023. The first goal on my list is to read a lot more books in Spanish. Now, I love to read in English, which is my native tongue, but especially in Spanish. The experience for me is just completely different. And I think reading is one of the best ways for me to learn Spanish because I can increase my accent, my Spanish speaking fluency, I can increase my listening comprehension, my reading comprehension, my writing skills, all just by reading. Now, some books that I have on my list so far to read. The first one is Yo no soy tu hija perfecta. And I bought this book because I saw a lot of people online talking about it and recommending it. Another book that I want to read is called 17 Minutos, Entrevista con el Dictador. And this was written by Jorge Ramos. So it's an interview that Jorge Ramos is having with Nicolás Maduro. And the reason why I bought this book is because I really like to learn about the politics of different countries. Also because I have been a part of various conversations with my Spanish speaking friends when this topic came up about politics and laws within their countries, and I want to be able to have a deeper conversation with them. The next book I want to read is called Short Stories in Spanish for Intermediate Learners. So I got this one because I already finished the beginner book. So now I want to see what kind of stories are in this version of this book. And the last book that I have, the last book that I have bought already is called Padre Rico, Padre Pobre. So this book I've heard recommended by a lot of entrepreneurs, and I like all things business and finance and entrepreneurship. So that's one reason why I bought this book. So more than likely, I'm going to be buying more books as well and probably not read them for many months, but these are just the ones that I have right now. And with these books, I want to do more of extensive reading. So not really doing a huge analysis on every single page and taking a whole bunch of notes, but I'll take some notes, but I kind of want to just read them as fast as I can so I can get through more books, because knowing myself, I will take a very long time to analyze every single page and try to understand every single thing on a single page. So that's why I want to get away from that a little bit and just try to finish a book. I will also really be focusing on the sentence structure of these books that I'm reading as well, so I can increase my sentence structure when I am speaking. I also really want to use my reading sessions to help with my Spanish speaking fluency, and then also to help me stop making so many mistakes. So I'll be focusing a lot on the sentence structures that I'm reading in these books. I'll be reading out loud a lot and more than likely recording myself doing this. And this is also going to help me with my accent as well, because I like to imitate different accents when I am reading. So that's me actually working on more than just one goal. The next goal on my list is to speak Spanish more. Now, I thought that this year I was speaking Spanish all the time, but now I'm realizing that there's actually a lot more room for improvement. Now, there are two sides to this. On one side, I want to speak Spanish more when I'm by myself. And then on the other side, I want to speak Spanish more in person or on the phone with native Spanish speakers. When I say speak Spanish when I'm alone, I mean just that. So one thing that I love to do is narrate everything that I'm doing. So right now, if I'm speaking Spanish when I'm by myself, I'm going to be saying things like, okay, ahora mismo estoy mirando mi teléfono y estoy grabando un video para mi canal de YouTube. Y bueno, después yo voy a, no sé, yo voy a cenar con unos amigos y así, algo así. So that is what I like to do. I want to do that more because sometimes I have not been doing that when I lack vocabulary for a certain topic. So that's where another goal comes into play, where I need to increase my vocabulary for different topics so I can actually meet the goal of speaking Spanish more. Speaking Spanish more with native Spanish speakers in person. Now, this is a goal, honestly, that I'm very surprised I have on my list for next year, because this year in 2022, I have spoke with the most Spanish speakers in person than I ever have in my life. But now I'm thinking about, I want to actually increase increase the number that I am speaking with. And one big reason for this is that I love to have conversations with Spanish speakers. It's honestly one of the biggest highlights of my day, especially now because I am more of a fluent Spanish speaker. So it's a lot easier for me than it was 2 years ago to be able to communicate with Spanish speakers in person. So I'm very proud of myself, but I also know that I can definitely increase my speaking skills in person because now I've realized that my Spanish speaking fluency really changes depending on who I'm talking to as well where I am currently at. So depending on if it's someone with an accent that I'm not familiar with, let's say like with my friends from Cuba, then it's actually very challenging for me to have more of a fluid conversation because it's hard for me to listen and comprehend to what they're saying and then think of a response that actually matches kind of their speed. Because that's kind of what I do. For whatever reason, if someone is talking to me in Spanish, I try to match their same exact speed because I don't know. They ask me a question really fast, so I feel like I have to respond to them very fast. That is something that I have to work on. And the same thing when I'm talking with my Dominican friend as well. So I talk with him a lot, so I hear his accent a lot, and I'm still adapting to the way that he speaks. And when I speak with him as well, it's still very difficult for me to have a fluid conversation. So I really want to be able to respond faster with Spanish speakers that I'm having conversations with because those are my friends. But when it comes to people that I'm meeting for the first time, then that fluency level really changes really rapidly. So I definitely have a lot to work to do when it comes to having or starting new conversations with new Spanish speakers. So with more conversations that I'm having with different Spanish speakers, I know that I'm going to become more well-rounded when it comes to my communication skills with Spanish speakers because just communicating with new people in general is very nerve-wracking. It's even more nerve-wracking and it also makes me very anxious. So I want to be able to reduce that anxiety, and then also that actually helps me to stop having so many mistakes, stop speaking with so many mistakes. When I have a lot of fear when I'm speaking to a Spanish speaker, there's nothing worse that makes my speaking just terrible than having all that fear inside of me, and then also having a lot of insecurities that other person is going to be criticizing the way I speak Spanish, or he doesn't speak very well, and all those different thoughts. So having a lot of practice speaking Spanish with many different Spanish speakers is definitely going to help me resolve all these problems and help me reach my goals. Another goal of mine is to increase the amount of vocabulary that I know with specific topics. And some of these topics are food and cooking, gym and fitness, hairstyles, and fashion. So one big reason why I want to expand my vocabulary is, again, so I can have longer conversations, have deeper conversations with Spanish speakers, and to be able to connect with them more at a personal level. And I say personal level because I actually have one friend who is Dominican, and he is also a barber. So that's something that he's extremely passionate about. But for me, I can't talk too much about barbershop terms and hairstyles and things like that. So for me, it's really important for me to be able to increase this type of vocabulary so I can have more conversations with him. And then also, I got my hair twisted. So before I used to have an afro, now I have my hair with twist. And I went to a barbershop and I got it done by a woman from Cuba. So we were speaking Spanish the whole time while she was doing my hair. And again, the same kind of issue occurred where I was not able to really express myself and talk about hair and things like that, or different hairstyles that I've had in the past because I just don't have that vocabulary. I don't really know that many terms. So that's why I want to be able to increase this type of vocabulary. And the same thing applies with the topics of food and cooking, and then also gym and fitness. I have a lot of friends who are passionate about those topics, and because I'm at the gym a lot and there's a lot of Spanish speakers there, and then I'm also going to a lot more Latino restaurants, so I have a lot of opportunities to have conversations in Spanish. But with this vocabulary, I want to be able to speak more in depth. And to accomplish this, I'm going to be consuming a lot of content in Spanish and taking a lot of notes. So I'll be watching a lot of movies, TV shows, reading, and listening to the radio, listening to music, podcasts, and things like that. And surprisingly enough, I actually have not watched a lot of movies in Spanish this year. So that's something that I want to change for next year, because I know that I can learn a ton of new vocabulary just by consuming movies and TV shows. Besides consuming a lot of content in Spanish, what I can also do is have conversations with my Spanish speaking friends about these different topics, because I've noticed that that helps me a lot to increase my vocabulary. Another goal of mine is to develop my accents. So I want to develop my Castilian accent, my Dominican, my Cuban, and my Mexican accent. So I know that is a ton of different accents, but for me, I love to imitate Spanish speakers. That's something that I do on the daily. So I'm very passionate about being able to develop an accent just in general, because for me, it is more of a challenge to not only pronounce words correctly with a neutral accent, but then add on a whole new accent from a particular Spanish speaking country while I'm speaking Spanish. So for me, it's just a really big challenge. As well, for me, is because of the exposure that I'm having to these accents. Just this year alone, I have made more friends from Cuba, Mexico, and La República Dominicana. So I've already noticed that my accent is already changing a lot because I'm around them all the time and I'm hearing them speak. So I'm starting to imitate them already without even trying. But now I actually want to take a lot of time and really develop my accent, listen to a lot of content that is from these countries, and really master the accents. The next goal on my list is to increase my listening comprehension. Now, one thing that I've realized is that being in different environments has a big effect on my listening comprehension. Sometimes it's at 95% and other times it's at 10%. For example, when I'm on the phone, for me, my listening comprehension is probably around 50 or 40%. And I don't know exactly if that's my fault or if it's just my phone's fault. But I think it's mostly my fault, because when I hear other Spanish speakers talk on the phone, they seem like they can hear just fine. Now, in the discoteca, this is also a place where I struggle a lot with my listening comprehension skills. And I know that there is loud music, a lot of people talking and things like that, but I definitely want to be able to understand what Spanish speakers are saying to me there, because usually it may be about dancing or something like that, or how do we do this, how to do this move that our dance instructor just showed us, but I'm not able to speak to them, or I can't respond to them because I had no idea what they said. So I already know that one issue is the music and things like that. But the other issue is different accents that I'm hearing with the Spanish speakers that I'm talking to. I remember when I was dancing with this one woman from Nicaragua, and I literally could not understand probably 98% of what she was trying to say to me. And one big reason for that is because I have never met anybody from Nicaragua until I met her. So I know that when I'm in these types of places and I'm meeting different Spanish speakers from different Spanish speaking countries, that I'm going to have this struggle with listening comprehension. Having a lot of patience is really going to help me reach this goal, because I know for me, when I meet a Spanish speaker for the first time, it takes me a very long time for me to adapt to the way that they speak and to their accent and to all the jargon that they're using. Next year, I really want to increase my knowledge of Hispanic culture. And one way that I'm going to do that is by listening to a lot of music and also by dancing. Now, this year, I got introduced to the genre El Merengue. And this particular genre comes from the Dominican Republic. So it's really interesting because merengue came before bachata, but I was listening to bachata before merengue. So I feel like I'm starting to get a lot more understanding of what the Dominican Republic is all about by listening to El Merengue, because it is extremely important to the country, as well as a dance. So I started to dance to la bachata, el merengue, cumbia, salsa just this year for the first time in my life. So I've been going to discotecas a lot to dance to all this music. And I can tell you that the experience is just so different. Listening to music in Spanish versus dancing to it and singing along is just something out of this world. And I'm also really been able to connect with Spanish speakers as well when it comes to all these different dances. Also this year, I have started to listen to a lot of cumbia. And the funny thing is, I was actually listening to this beforehand in movies and TV shows that I heard growing up in the United States, but I never knew what the name of it was. But now I know that it's called La Cumbia. Selena, also known as the Queen of Tejano music, music also had some songs that were La Cumbia. And it's also really funny because I didn't even know what Tejano music was until this year as well. And Tejano music is a mixture of American music and Mexican music. So for next year, I definitely want to learn more facts like that about music history and Hispanic culture, and then learn more about different artist names and other genres that I don't know yet. Another language learning goal I have on my list for 2023 is to stop procrastinating so much. That is something that I have done so much this year. I would say I'm almost a professional at it. But I know that once I stop procrastinating so much by watching a whole bunch of random YouTube videos that have nothing to do with learning Spanish, and on Instagram, scrolling on TikTok and things like that, I'm going to be able to reach my goals a lot easier because I'm not wasting all this time. I need to get out of my comfort zone. Now, this goal is very important for me to reach because usually when I have done this in the past, I have seen a lot of progress. So a lot of progress in my writing skills and my reading skills and my listening comprehension and my speaking skills. So I really need insecurities that I have when it comes to learning Spanish and just break out of my shell. Especially because, like I've said before in the past, that I'm actually an introvert, so it's actually quite difficult to have conversations in Spanish, especially if it is someone that I have never met before. But with more practice, this whole process will become a lot easier, and then I won't be missing out on a lot of opportunities to learn Spanish because I am not being so shy and I'm not staying in my shell. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your language learning goals for Spanish for 2023? Thank you very much for watching this video. If you would like to support my channel, you can do that directly at my Buy Me a Coffee page, and the link is in the description box of this video. Nos vemos muy pronto.